So let's move on now to the fifth. This is the measure of metabolic acidosis, or mineral status. And it's that simple urinary pH in the morning, because after 6 hours of rest, you equilibrate the urine with the bladder cells. So after rest, if you check the pH of the urine, you get information that's useful in regard to what's going on inside the cells, metabolic acidosis or mineral status. And as you see, if you're too acidic, less than 6.5, you're at risk and probably have lack of minerals inside the cell, too much acid inside the cell, and therefore the battery is shutting down inside the cell. And you're shifting from elective protective to survival mode. And then the healthy range, the mid-range, 6.5 to 7.5. It turns out the middle path has a lot to recommend it in many circumstances. And on the other extreme, if you're more than 7.5 in the morning, you might be tearing your muscle down and in catabolic illness. So we use the first morning urine pH, or the first urine after rest, as that measure of underlying mineral status metabolic acidosis. It costs about 5 to 10 cents a day. And people keep a log, and they'll come in and tell you that the days they're more acidic are the days they're more symptomatic, they're less optimistic. The days when they're more alkaline and in the healthy range, they're less symptomatic and they're more optimistic. And when people make these kinds of aha discoveries, it's really exciting. We also were concerned many years ago because we needed to know the food effects on body chemistry, and that's what this chart shows. So this is the total analysis of the food in regard to its impact on body chemistry. This is not acid ash residue. This is not the old generation. This is the new way, total metabolism of the food and impact on body chemistry. And you want to have, on the right, the more alkaline foods. 80% of what you consume, 80% of what's on your plate should be alkaline forming if you're in repair, and maybe 60% or 2/3 if you're maintaining good health. So you want to have a dominance of the alkaline foods, and you want to have less of the acid-forming foods, but you can have some of this as long as you have mostly that. And then, of course, in addition, you drop out any immune-reactive substances. Sean?
So one of the key takeaways from the whole pH backstory, that would be more focused on mineral status, magnesium, etc. So essentially, if you're too acidic, what you're saying is you don't have enough magnesium or different minerals.
Well, no, specifically magnesium and potassium. So if you look at what is it that keeps the cell charged up and happy and so forth, it is inside the cell magnesium and potassium. So all the other minerals are important, but if you want the cell to be happy and alkaline, it's magnesium and potassium. Many of the medicines that we have deplete minerals. Many of the medicines that we have cause metabolic acidosis. Julian Seifter writes a chapter in either Harrison's textbook of medicine or equivalent, maybe Cecil and Loeb, about metabolic acidosis. And he points out how common it is and how commonly overlooked it is and how devastating the consequences are when you don't pay attention to it. Because much treatment failure is caused by cellular metabolic acidosis. And other treatment failure is caused by too much toxic matter. And other treatment failure is caused by inadequate antioxidant intake, even though people are taking antioxidants in. Okay? So this chart, by the way, is in the Joy in Living the Alkaline Way guide, so you're welcome to take a look at it there. It's also available online, and you can download it for free. Yes?
Might not be related, but the word acidic is related to...
Yes?
Some people promote, acidic
Well, yes. Let's talk very quickly about that because it's an important, complicated subject. You want your stomach to be acid, but you don't want your cells to be acid. Now, there's a school of thought that says if you want to be lean, follow a modified paleo program, which means minimal carbohydrates and ketoacidosis. And the urine will be acidic, And I say, don't do that. But that is what people recommend. Kirk Parsley and others who are advocates for paleo recommend this. Now, starvation, ketosis means metabolic starvation. In starvation, guess what? You lose weight. You do. And you waste a lot of essential nutrients that you have trouble getting back. So I am not an advocate for modern paleo living. And I'm not for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is you can't live a paleo life today. We're not hunter-gatherers that go out with feast and famine and saber-toothed tigers. So the notion that you can, quote, look back in history at a time when feast and famine allowed people to survive starvation, and by the way, they were very lean and relatively short, which to me means nutritionally inadequate. So I'm a fan of physiology, and therefore I want you to have a healthy 6.5 to 7.5 in the morning, because if your urine is acidic on whatever basis, you're either deficient in minerals or you're driving minerals out of your body. And why do I say that? Because if the urine gets too acidic, the kidney dies, and it will protect itself by pulling minerals out of your bone, pulling minerals out of your tissues, pulling minerals out of your cells, to protect itself from the acid load. How smart of the kidney. How dumb of us to not appreciate physiology. Yeah?
So I had an experience, I've struggled with this issue of acid and alkaline for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've had an experience with somebody who called me on the phone and told me that he was working with one of the greats who was prescribing a vegetarian diet and alkaline and testing their urine. And in fact, his was getting, staying acid or getting a little more acid than it was. And my understanding is that it's not the food per se that is the issue, but what it does to it, or what drives the chemistry in the body.
Well, it's a little more than that. So one is the native effects of the food on body chemistry. That's the chart we have, and you want the more alkaline-forming foods. But what if some of those alkaline-forming foods are immune reactors? Because when you have a delayed allergy, there's a burst of acid that forms. And what if in some of the foods you're taking, there are some hormone disruptors? Not only do they disrupt your hormones, they cause another burst of acid. So it really is elegant and interdependent. You want alkaline-forming foods that you can digest, assimilate, and eliminate without immune burden. When you remove the immune burden, a lot of the confusion goes away. But the other side is also true, because very often people under therapeutic guidance end up using fats and amino acids for energy, and that'll cause another kind of imbalance. It's a survival mechanism. It's to prevent you from dying. It's good to have survival mechanisms. But I'm skeptical or a little concerned about using things like starvation and physiologic extremes in the pursuit of health. I just haven't found it sustainable.
So in this example, one conversation, and I said, just on the phone, well, why don't you go ahead and add flesh proteins back into your diet, and let's just see what happens. And by adding flesh proteins back in, it was something that he needed, and therefore his pH normalized.
Good example of what you're talking about, and fine. However, I take it from what you said that his digestion was strong enough that he could add meat or flesh back. There is an alkaline tide, so you have to be careful about interpreting urines other than after 6 hours of rest. Wiley, for example, is a very good physicist but doesn't understand physiology, and he will tell you that meat is alkalinizing, and I know that meat is acidifying. One of the nice things about being a physicist is you don't have to look at anybody else's evidence. You just build a model and work within it. Now, it is true that when you have a hamburger or you have some meat, ammonia comes in. So for the first few hours, you get an alkaline tide. And that's what he noticed. It is true. After many hours, though, you get the acidosis that more than undermines the alkaline tide. And this has been known for a long time. This is not a bulletin that I'm sharing with you that we helped reinforce. If you follow physiology, I think you'll be well served. If you follow a mechanistic model or take just a moment in time, like 3 hours after you eat some meat, you're more alkaline. True. What about 12 and 24 hours? Oh, don't ask. So if you are acidotic, we want to have ionized magnesium and choline citrate to overcome the magnesium uptake block, form tiny little nano droplets, magic little nano tiny droplets that are taken up by neutral pores, because the normal channel for taking up magnesium is often poisoned. It's easily inhibited.
Is that chelated magnesium? Which one?
Yeah, this is 4 different kinds of magnesium. Any ionized magnesium is fine in this context, but it's magnesium glycinate, right? Magnesium ascorbate, magnesium aspartate, and then some magnesium and fatty acid.
But if I want to push somebody to, say, 600 or 800 milligrams of magnesium, for instance, for with bipolar illness, or if I'm treating sleep and this is what it takes, et cetera, aspartate is dangerous at a higher level because it is.
Well, please understand that this enhanced uptake and chaperone delivery is different than anything else you've heard about in regard to magnesium. And by the way, I take on a daily basis 1,320 milligrams of elemental magnesium plus diet. So I'm probably taking in 17 to 1750 milligrams a day of elemental magnesium. No. See, the amazing thing with the choline citrate is the choline citrate enhances the uptake and chaperones the delivery of the magnesium to the cell. So I'm taking levels of magnesium that every magnesium expert in the world will tell you causes the runs and diarrhea. And Ron Aline, who's one of the magnesium, high quality people, was a colleague of mine at the clinical center and is our methodologist in one of the trials we're running. When I told Ron that I was taking between 880 and 1,320 milligrams a day of elemental magnesium, he says, prove it. I said, how about if I send it to you? He proved it to himself. When you enhance the uptake and chaperone the delivery, it's completely different. If you don't do what I'm saying, magnesium, the more you put in, the harder it is to get it into the body. So the more you put in the gut, the more likely you are to have diarrhea. But if you enhance uptake and chaperone delivery, then you get the best of both. And as I said to you, I'm taking 1,320 elemental magnesium a day, and that's what optimizes my physiology. Now that's a bunch, but apparently I need that. And how do I know I need that? My blood pressure, my vascular compliance, my restorative sleep, my skin elasticity. There's a whole lot of things that all relate here. Sean?
Can you talk a little bit about how some will advocate doing the pH test throughout the day, but you advocate to do it first thing in the morning? That's more reflective of
That's right.
cells and how they reflect.
If you want a meaningful measure of the cellular status, after 6 hours, the urine equilibrates with the lining cells in the bladder. That's the only time during the day. When I first looked at it, what influences pH during the day, there were 28 variables. You couldn't figure out what was going on. Now it's up to 40. So there's a lot more variables that we have learned about, so that during the day, pH is fluxing all which ways, and you can't, in my experience, you can't interpret it. And I know a lot of people who dose themselves based on either their saliva or urine pH, and they end up whirling around like dervishes until they fall down. So you do need to understand physiology. Physiology says that you have 1 time a day after rest when you have equilibrated urine. Now, if you want to measure every salivary, urine, and poop pH, it's okay. But if you bring that data to me, I won't know how to interpret it. And I'm not sure that data that you can't interpret is even worth collecting. So I understand that people have often recommended not only measuring all these different pHs and all these different times, but changing your supplements based on the momentary pH. And with due respect, you can only say that if you don't understand physiology. And if you do understand physiology, don't say that. Okay? Yes, it's 2 capsules. It's 2 capsules of magnesium representing 220 milligrams of elemental magnesium with 1 teaspoon of choline citrate, 1 teaspoon of choline citrate, and it must be choline citrate. No other form of choline like choline bitartrate, no, no, no. No other form of citrate, choline citrate only. 1 teaspoon of that with 2 capsules of the magnesium. Well, when's the best time for that individual? This gives you 220 milligrams of elemental magnesium for each 2 capsules. And you might take that on rising, you might take that with breakfast, you might take that midday, you might take that before exercise, you might take that in the evening. I do know the optimum, but I very rarely even try to get people to do the optimum, because if you make it a little too detailed, it's too complex for most people, and then they don't do anything. So when do I have people take magnesium? Whenever they'll take it. And self-assessments are quite okay. If you take magnesium and then you go out and exercise and you find your recovery time is better, or you take magnesium in the evening and you find that you relax and sleep better, and you do a salt and soda bath and have some abdominal breathing and green dichromatic light so that you're prepared for restorative sleep. I have colleagues who recommend magnesium in the evening. I have colleagues who recommend magnesium in the morning. I recommend that you take magnesium at the times you'll take it.
Explain what your awareness is about why so many people take even small amounts of magnesium have loose bowels. Do you think it's not being absorbed, so it's pouring
Yes,
water,
I know. No, no.
smooth muscle?
No. We know that the calcium magnesium ATPase, which is the normal uptake for magnesium, is often poisoned. And what poisons it? Hormone disruptors, toxic metal, acidosis, etc. In that situation, the magnesium will be minimally absorbed in normal ways, and even a little bit in those patients can cause the runs. Those are the very patients who benefit from this combination of ionized magnesium and choline citrate, and we have folks that on 220 milligrams of elemental magnesium, they have the runs, and on 880 a day of the combination of magnesium and choline citrate, they have normal bowel habits. Right. Yeah.
That's 1 teaspoon for every 2?
Yes, 2 caps and 1 teaspoon. Well, I understand that if some is good, more is better. I recommend following our advice, which is 2 capsules and 1 teaspoon, and you take that as many times during the day, 1 to 5 doses during the day, based on your urine pH in the morning. And I can tell you from other people's experience, although not recommended by us, that if you take 4 or 6 capsules at once with 3 teaspoons of choline citrate, you may not like it. Okay, well, what happens is, if you work within physiology, you're rewarded. If you push to pharmacology, even of natural products, I think you'll be disappointed. And when you talk about taking 220 milligrams at a dose and taking anywhere from 1 to 5 doses a day, that's within physiologic levels. When you start talking about 440 or 660 milligrams of elemental magnesium in 1 dose, that's pharmacology. And I don't do pharmacology before physiology. I do physiology before pharmacology. Okay?
So magnesium citrate, is often used if somebody's constipated.
Sure. Well, magnesium citrate is an osmotic diuretic, and that's a separate matter, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about ionized magnesium plus choline citrate, which is completely different, right? But yes, mag citrate is a classic osmotic diuretic. Well, not only does it work, in the cases of people who use it, these are the very people we were just talking about who can't take magnesium up from their gut because the calcium magnesium ATPase is poisoned. And that's why we developed this high uptake and chaperone delivery magnesium that doesn't depend upon the calcium magnesium ATPase.
Quick question on that. So, in a lot of the athletic circles, magnesium citrate is really common for recovery and repair. So you're making a distinction between magnesium citrate and elemental ionized.
I'm making a critical distinction.
Right.
I don't care what form of magnesium you take. if the calcium-magnesium channel is poisoned, the more you take, the more runs you'll get, the more diarrhea you'll have. If you want to get magnesium in athletes, in high-performance people, in people who need magnesium, they need what I've just described, the combination of ionized magnesium, 2 capsules, plus a teaspoon of choline citrate to form a nanodroplet that's taken up through the neutral pores, which no other magnesium happens.
You said poison.
Poison because the normal channel to take up magnesium is easily poisoned by toxins. Toxins, toxic metal, hormone disruptors, solvent residues, acidosis. So it really all is interdependent, and we have now spent well over a century trying to fool the body. And what we found is we fooled ourselves. So if you want to follow physiology, take careful notes, call us up, let's talk about the details. There are some high-level principles. We apply them clinically, one individual at a time, and we're happy to work with you so that your understanding can be amplified, in your practices. So with regard to this Alkaline Way Guide, it gives you a lot of information about the physiologic alkalinizing foods and water. But you'll have no recommendation about a machine that makes alkaline water for the reasons I said before. It gives you information about that first morning urine pH and how to assess it and monitor it and log it. Gives information about the enhanced uptake and chaperone delivery magnesium choline citrate combination, but it also includes relaxation response and abdominal breathing and green light and sunlight and eating in harmony with your nature and lifestyle and eating locally grown, vine-ripened, organic, or biodynamic foods when possible, and making restorative sleep a priority, and working our muscles and relaxing in proportion. I often find people who are terrific and well-disciplined about their exercise regimen, but their mindfulness relaxation response is absent. And then I find people who are magnificent at Hatha Prana Yoga or Tai Chi Chuan or Pilates, but there's a lack of balance. And I come back to living in harmony with our nature in balance. And it's not just an abstract concept, it's really, I believe, ready for prime time. So rest, exercise, and recreate in balance. And this is Melanie Widener is the source of that little visual. And The Science of Breath is the name of a book, which I do recommend to you, The Science of Breath, by Ballantyne and Ajaya. And there is a science to breath. And by the way, breath is our refuge. And who said that? Anyone know who said breath is the refuge? The Buddha. It was a while ago. So we want to eat in harmony with nature and with our nature. No monocropping, organic compost, biodynamic preparations, farm as an ecosystem. How about having your own little front yard edible landscaping garden? Come to visit in Virginia. We'll eat some out of the garden, and the rest will be whole foods that are easy to prepare. But I do understand what you were saying before about needing to have resources where the food can just appear. And with the right guidance today, fortunately, these things are possible. It used to be much harder. When I first got into really healthy eating, first of all, it was hard to find a really healthy restaurant, and second of all, very often the people in that restaurant didn't look healthy. Because it was hard for them to get all of the really fresh things that they needed, and anyway, but long story short, biodynamics is a holistic, ecological, and ethical approach to farming, gardening, food, and nutrition. And when you look globally, the rate at which we're poisoning the soil because of artificial chemicals, etc., means that sooner rather than later, we're going to have to rethink this whole issue of farm to fork. Now, in my case, it's worth it for me to know the farm from which most of my food comes. So if it comes from Kimmerton Farms, a biodynamic community up in Pennsylvania, It comes through a CSA, a community-supported agriculture, and we receive the benefits of it. You have to go out of your way a little bit to do that, but I highly recommend doing that.